Hello, coaches. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. It would be beneficial if you had a copy of the 2020 local league rules with you. So why don't you pause this video and get a copy of those. Thank you for getting a copy. I won't bore you and read you specifically the rule by rules as it relates to our local league rules for soccer. I will, however, point out several changes that were made recently, as in the past 48 months, or as well as changes that were specific to COVID-19. Section 1 of our document basically handles all of our team formation guidelines as it relates to the number of subs and rosters and that type of thing. Your recreation club coordinator will handle most of this for you, but it is there should anyone have questions as to why someone may or may not be allowed to participate. As far as equipment goes, that's covered in Section 2. Please make sure you are understanding of what age division you're coaching, as they all have a separate ball size based on the age-appropriate division. During your practice schedule, we have done our best to ensure that our practices comply with the Commonwealth's guidelines for physical distancing, and we have posted our practice and game schedules, hopefully, online at RoanokeCountyParks.com/athletics by the end of the week. We are asking that folks not deviate from their permitted practice schedule, as well as limit your practices to 75 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes. If there's a situation where you cannot attend your practice, you do not have the authority to simply switch practices with another team. All of our teams are grouped together in pods, and so the same teams will be at the same park at the same facility each week. And so if we get into a contract tracing situation, we know exactly what 4 teams were there. It's the same situation with games. And so please do not make any changes to your practice schedule. If you need to cancel a practice because you and your assistants can't be there, we understand that completely. Just be sure to notify your team and we will go from there. At your first practice, your site supervisor at the facility will have your coaching credential. So please be sure to come by and get it, as well as have it on at the remainder of your games and practices. We are currently not allowing folks to come by and get coaching credentials, as our building is currently closed to the public at this time. As far as game regulations go, several of the big ones that we've made in all age divisions, throw-ins have been replaced with an indirect kick from the sideline, so hopefully no one will have to touch a ball. If you've coached in futsal or indoor soccer, this is basically the standard way that which throw-ins are handled. It will be a change for this year, and we will go from there, depending on how long that remains in place. As far as field dimensions, the goal size and the facilities are there. One change I'll make due to participation numbers in our U14 soccer division, we are playing 7v7 on a small-sided field this year. We simply just did not have the interest to play full-sided 11v11 soccer. There is no ability to deviate from that. So coaches can't come to a gentleman's agreement at the field and say, we're going to play 8v8. That's, again, for spacing purposes and to make sure that we have the appropriate distancing as well as we can in our park system. As far as pregame goes, Section 4.2 will cover. It goes on how to start. This year with soccer, we are changing. Instead of teams sharing the same sideline and spectators being on one, teams will have their own sideline. So the home team will be able to pick first if they arrive first, and if not, it's first come, first serve. But we are asking that all parents and spectators with that team remain on their appropriate sideline. We are allowing spectators to sit on the end lines this year as long as they do not interfere with gameplay. As always, please encourage your spectators to remain at least 12 feet away from the field to allow for us to and the officials to get around the field as needed. There is a mandatory play time rule. That's 4.3 for all of our age divisions. The U14 division is highlighted just because of the new format with 7v7. Please reminded there is both a minimum play time as well as for larger teams a minimum sit time to ensure equitability as much as possible. The game clock and the length of games has remained the same, as well as the breaks. The U8 and U10 division are broken into 4-minute quarters, and the U12, 4 8-minute quarters for 8U, 4 10-minute quarters for U10. And U12 and 14 play halves, and the breaks are 4 minutes between quarters for 8U and 10U, and 8 minutes at halftime between the U12 and U14 divisions. For substitutions, remember that in 8U and 10U, substitutions can only be made during mini quarters unless you're doing so for an injured player or someone gets a yellow card, or you or your officials feel that the player just would really benefit from a break. And I think you can all know when those situations may or may not happen. U12 and above divisions can substitute by the USYSA rulebook, which basically allow free substitution as long as they check in with the official prior to. Please make sure your players check in. When they go to check in, sit at the midfield area so that the official can look for them. The heading was the U.S. soccer rule change in a few years ago. Goalies. The other thing you need to make sure of as it relates to goalies is individuals need to have their own goalie gloves. So we can't have community goalie gloves. So if your recreation club is providing you 2 or 3 sets per team or whatever that may be, they need to be assigned to a specific player, and only those specific players will be allowed to be goalies. We're not going to allow shared equipment, and gloves would be considered shared equipment. Talk a little bit here about carded fouls. If a player receives a yellow card during a game, they are required to sit out. We call that a cool down period, because a lot of what we saw and have seen in the past is once one card comes out, there's typically a second or third that follows either by that player because they're out of control or from a retaliation standpoint. So as a reminder, anyone that gets a yellow card is required. If a player receives a red card or a yellow-red, which is basically their second yellow card, they are required to sit out the remainder of the game. They may be in trouble further, and they may face additional suspension. Just a reminder, you don't have to get 2 yellow cards to be sent off. You can go straight to red, so no warning is really necessary. And just remember, coaches can be sent off at any point by the official, as well as my game staff and site supervisors that are at the facility. Officials do not have to give a warning based on the severity of your tone or conduct with them. If you have issue with an officials during the game, please seek out the site supervisor. They're in their bright yellow shirts and will be visible and should introduce themselves to you prior to the game. If they've not done so, please seek them out so that you can be sure to address any concerns you may have with them. There is no overtime or golden goal or any type of situation in our rec soccer program. Games which are tied at the end of regulation consider final. And Section 410 basically covers the officials' authority and lets you know, and it's in writing, that the officials do have the ability to make changes, stop the game, ask folks to leave, and that type of thing. Also, if no officials are present, the game is canceled. We're not going to ask you to do a scrimmage. This is currently will be corrected in the local league rules, but there are no scrimmages to take place without officials. Protests, there are no protest of rules, so if official makes a judgment call or an error call, there's not something that you can do. The only thing that would be permitted to be protest, and my joke about this, is if a 16-year-old bearded player shows up at U10 soccer and you know good and well that person's way too old to be playing, you can protest age, residency, the fact that they just played a game before, because you're not allowed to share or borrow players, the steps to protest and what to do. We do have an inclement weather policy. We will make cancellation decisions when possible on our cancellation line, and the number is 387-6455 extension 6. Please call that about 90 minutes before your activity. Inside of 90 minutes, more than likely, your activity will be called at the field. If weather develops poorly during a game, the officials and site supervisors will make the decision, and we are asking you as coaches to handle that for your practices. If lightning, we do have the lightning policy. If thunder is heard, be aware and keep a lookout. If lightning is seen, all players need to be moved off the field into a sheltered area or their cars, and there is a 30-minute warning, or excuse me, a 30-minute delay whenever there is a lightning strike. If there are multiple lightning strikes, games will not be delayed any further, so the second lightning to strike will automatically cause that particular game to be canceled. Due to the frequency of summer showers, especially in August and early September, Just because the 6:15 game is canceled due to lightning does not mean the 7:15 and 8:15 games were canceled. So please do not automatically assume that because one game is canceled due to lightning that the remainder of the day will be as well. The concussion protocols are in here. That's the old when in doubt, sit them out. So if you have a player that you feel is having concussion-like symptoms, you are required to have them sit out. Most of our recreation clubs require you to take the Heads Up CDC course. The link there, I recommend you do so. And just as a reminder, as a volunteer, you're given all sorts of wonderful things. One title you're given is a mandatory reporter. Anytime you suspect child abuse in a volunteer or lead volunteer role, such as a coach, a teacher, a Sunday school teacher, you are required to report suspected child abuse. And that suspected child abuse is not reported to your rec club coordinator, another coach, a parent. You have the responsibility to report that to social services. There's a link there for what to do, as well as a training program should you have any questions. All of our rules are basically self-sufficient. We feel they're pretty detailed in their descriptions. If you have any questions, please contact your recreation club coordinator. If they don't have an answer for you, you're welcome to call into our office and we will see you if we cannot answer your questions. Thank you all. Have a great, wonderful season. Hopefully you have, but if you've not yet, please watch the message to all coaches and parents relating the COVID-19 specific changes. Thank you.